Okay, you touch on the recommendation system. Well, let's ask yourself, when you go into your YouTube, how many times you see click on the ads coming to you? Because well, they recognize what you're interested in, and then they push it to you. Ultimately, it is the money well. They want you to buy the things. And what else? Well, I have already mentioned about the chatbots. The chatbots are also, again, they're coming quite sophisticated nowadays. It's not unusual. You go to the website, one of the things they serve you 24 hours, actually using an AI chatbot. And what else? Looking at in terms of the customer behaviors, forecasting as well. So looking at from your past record, and then try to see that what are you interested in. Well, I use one particular site, we have used it, the Timo, okay? And actually, they're not using just pushing the things. They also put in some other features. Games, you go to the spin wheels, they try to energize you. So those are the things, they also go into your emotions. So I see there's another area where they touch on too. And then also looking into segmentation. Well, in IEEE, we do exercises what we call the customer segmentation. So we also analyze, through the survey, from that we can take a look, for certain areas, of our membership. Is it time to be 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I know that because I mentioned that earlier on. If I spoke too long, you need to give me a cue. All right, I need to give it to someone else. Sorry, NJ. Okay, some of the main things in here. Thank you.
So sorry about that, and very interesting with your experience. I mean, this is so. My similar question is to Kapil, who has been architecting digital experiences. So Kapil, one is the same question. How do you see how they deliver a personalized experience? Second is, what are the trends that you see in coming 5 years in terms of further enhancing AI into digital experiences?
Sure, thanks Ajay. Yeah, I think what Professor Lan said here, right? See, personalization has been existing for almost more than a decade now. My first personalization project I did was back in 2011. But what's changing in the last couple of years, what AI has been doing to that specific field for our brands, is bringing new technologies, new ways to do it. The power of the compute has increased. The amount of data we have is increased. That's fundamentally bringing changes to what we can do with the personalization for the brands. And for the last couple of years, these new transformation models that is giving the birth to generative AI is basically becoming the next linchpin, which is going to drive the ultra personalization use cases coming in. To the question that Ajay, you brought across, I think the trends that at least we are anticipating when we speak to our clients, our customers, is coming around how you can ultra personalized or rather hyper personalized experiences for your consumers 1:1. So if I'm to, for example, if I'm getting an email versus Ajay getting an email, I want to hear what I want to see in the email is the kind of personalization we're going to talk about now, which is where the segmentation aspect, the segmentation rules, and the entire technology stack is changing differently. The second trend that we are starting to see is thinking about emotions and voice coming in together, and personal assistance is going to be used for brand discovery and product discovery. Siri, for example, or Amazon's Alexa have been existing for a long time now, but they've mostly been gimmicks. In some of these cases, they're used by kids to play games or ask some questions what the weather is and what have you. And that has been largely limiting for the technology to unable to understand what is it, the underlying intent of the questions asked by the consumers itself. But with the latest trends in the AI, especially of the generative models, it is becoming more and more possible for the systems and the tools to now understand what the customer is looking for. And that is going to start driving the trends in terms of what voice is going to do when you start connecting it to the emotion part of the puzzle and start making your personal assistants becoming a lot more powerful. I'm actually eagerly awaiting for Apple to launch their advance into the Siri, which seems to be the first step in that direction coming in, and how the brands is going to use this piece out. So those are at least the two big ones where we are monitoring, and how generative AI and some of the other latest transformation models is going to make it across.
All right. Thank you, Kapil. Yeah. And, so my follow-up question to Professor Lance. So we talk about AI automation and we talk about human creativity. So the key part is, how do you balance the two when you are delivering those experiences to users?
How many of you have ever watched a movie called Short Circuit? Old movie, 1986, Johnny Number 5. I still remember it. Anybody watched that movie before? You come across it? If you know, try to pick it up. You know, well, you talk about a couple of robots, and then you got a lightning flash. Some of the robots called Short Circuit. Suddenly, one of the robots becomes very intelligent. He can read all the books, scan through it, and get the knowledge. And one of the last scenes that really come to my mind is the robot can understand a joke. So by the same token, can we really have the robot, or maybe AI, whatever it is, can generate original? That is one of the things. You know, but in terms of entertainment, I do see the comedians is some people I really respect, because they somebody just doing a drama, you just repeat the same scene. Somebody sing the same song all the time. The comedians, you cannot tell the joke over and over again, expect people still laugh. So that's a challenge. So this is how I see the creativity is something that AI will be a bigger challenge. That another aspect is emotion. I already mentioned about emotions, right? In terms of the shopping, how you really entice a guy from shopping. That's another one. Recognizing, because his emotion is important. Well, one of the issues a lot of developed world is suicide.
Perfect. So while we talk about Netflix giving you recommendation, here is Professor Lance already given a recommendation for Short Circuit. I'll watch it next, surely. Over to Professor John for next question.
Okay. So let me move into the other aspect of AI. Being a teacher for the last 2 decades, we were all seeing the emergence of AI. Then I would like to have another teacher on the panel, Professor Mukesh Mohania. So let's take this question about the role of AI in education. So basically AI has driven personalized learning platforms and have shown a lot of promise in tailoring education, specifically to each individual student's needs, and thereby we can see that there are a lot of gain in the outcomes, learning outcomes that we have. But ideally there is a kind of a debate that is always happening. What is AI's ideal role in education, and how we can ensure that it rather than enhances the learning outcome and the critical thinking skill and the teaching skills. Majority of the time we get a debate telling that AI is going to distract the student learning outcome. So I would like to know what is Professor Mukesh Mohania's viewpoint on this.
Okay, good morning everyone. So let me touch base on this AI for education or AI in education. And this is the area that I have been working in the last 11 years. When I became IBM Distinguished Engineer in IBM asked me to lead the IBM Watson Education Unit. So that's why basically I chose this topic. And I've been working basically that there is a company called Extra Marks. It is a tech ed company, right? Ed tech company. And I have implemented all the AI solutions over there. So there are 3 aspects of that. That how the AI can help in education, in basically improving the learning outcomes. Number 2, in identifying the skills, the gaps that we have, right? And the third is basically how to make the learning content more smarter and more interactive. So I'll basically explain with a couple of examples the applications that we have developed, right, in the last several years and while in IBM. So one is, the first thing we should understand that one size does not fit to everyone. So if I'm speaking and there are 70 people over here, everyone may not be following everything. So the question is basically that how I can make my content more personalized to you. And for that I need to understand your background. The prerequisites basically, whether I'm speaking on a particular topic, the prerequisite of that topic basically, have you really grasped that topic or not? Did you well that topic in the examination or not? So that means basically that we have collected humongous amount of data, because each of us basically are interacting with the digital devices, and we have collected that on information, and then we build up basically your learning profile, that what kind of content do you like. So if I give basically one content and to all of you, some of you will basically spend 45 minutes on that, some of you will spend 3 minutes and will close it. Some of you basically will spend 15 minutes, go jump to the exercise and may not do well, right? So after some time basically, once we have collected the data let's analyze that information and use that information what should be rendered to you next time when you come on that, right? So that is basically personalizing the content based on basically what you have learned and how much do you know earlier. Second is basically the skill gap analysis, right? A company comes here for an interview. They have very well defined job description. Now I want to see, hey, here is the company requirements and here I am, right? What are the gaps in my skills and how can I fill those gaps, right? How my AI can really help me in what order I should look at or study and which content I should really look for that, right? So those are the basically the skill gap analysis and the learning pathways recommendation, as Professor Lance was also telling, that recommendation is one of the things in the AI, right? And the third is when I evaluating you and can I basically personalize the each question paper to all 70 of you, right? We have developed and we published this work in SIG KDD, in ECML, in ICER, in all top-notch conferences in the last 3-4 years. Those who are interested can look at that. IEEE, TKDE, and CIKM and all that. To personalize the question paper and I guarantee that every one of us will get a different question except basically the complex number question. Whether it's a differential equations, whether it's a trigonometric algebraic one, by either doing the paraphrasing or changing the units, changing the entities names, changing the numbers, meeting all the constraints that you have defined in the question paper. And this is what basically the AI really helps. So I strongly believe, because we have developed those solutions, deployed those solutions to number of clients in IBM and outside IBM, where AI can help in personalizing the content, the personalizing the evaluation, which eventually improves the learning outcomes.
Thank you, Professor Mukesh. So it's good to note that a lot of personalization research has been happening near to our place, and then probably over the years we may find a lot of students also who is actively working. It's good to know that some of your work has been published in top forums. So it was a good learning for all of us. So over to Ajay for taking the next question.
Yeah, thank you, Professor John, and good to know, Professor Mukesh, that there is a personalization in question paper, and I'm glad that I'm sitting next to him. So my next exam will be an easier one, I hope so. Right? So my next question is to Deepak, and there is no discussion of AI which is complete without the future of work and future of jobs, or what we call it, will AI take our jobs away, right? If you look at McKinsey report, it says that AI itself will generate about $13 trillion of business by 2030. At the same time, AI talks about it will replace a lot of jobs. That is one. It will ask people to switch jobs due to automation, right? But having said that, it's going to create a lot of jobs also. Okay. Now, interestingly, Amazon is the world's second largest employer in a private sector. While their revenue has increased by about 25-30% in last 2-3 years, but their employee headcount has reduced by a few percentage points. Recently, in one of their warehouses, they have moved out 1 lakh employees and they have deployed 750,000 robots actually. Now my question is, will AI lead to massive job losses, or will it be a new kind of employment which is going to come up? Right? And how do you adopt, what kind of strategy each of us should adopt to deal with this new AI world?
So I'll start. So when I was growing up, computers were like just coming in, and there were a lot of discussions, and I was very young, but I still remember saying that should we allow computers to pervade the society? It will take away all our jobs. And here we are, like almost 30-35 years after, and we have seen the revolution. I think AI has that kind of potential, and especially now with generative AI, we are seeing humongous potential. But that said, there is going to be a huge shift in the job market. So monotonous, repeatable tasks are going to go away, just like you said, Amazon, right? So I think there are two perspectives. One is how we kind of train ourselves and the youngsters on the education part, and the other is how we adopt and cultivate the usage of AI, and both of them will see the shifts. So on one hand, we need to, for example, like if you take me as an example, I had to reskill, upskill, so I started with COBOL programming, and here we are doing generative AI. So at some point, I think there was a discussion, maybe just it's still on, that do we even need software engineers? And as Ajay you mentioned, I think all of us, we are trying to automate the SDLC, but what we see is there has to be, human brain is like limitless, and I think today what we have achieved is probably, a very low fraction of it. I mean, there's no competition. So there are certain uniqueness that comes with humans. We have to kind of build on that. For example, I'll give you an example before I end. Say a loan operator, loan processing, and banks are very, ahead in adopting technology. And we have done for clients, end-to-end automation or AI-led automation for banks. But say a customer comes and say with a 50 lakh of loans, will it go through autonomous loan processing? Of course not, So there comes your specialized underwriter who will assess this. So probably all the monotonous work, document extraction, digitization, putting data in, into your screens, validating the rules have all been done by, AI and other kinds of, technology. But the final decision is still with the human. Because there has to be, certain assessment which probably goes beyond application of all these, rules and technology, which is that human intuition. Of course, creativity comes along with, may not be in this example. So that is our USP. As a society, that is our USP, and we should try to build on that.
So that's good to hear, Devanjana. That's a positive word that, all our jobs are possibly going to save. But what is key is how do we reskill? And then I can talk about it. I mean, every year or every other year, we have to reskill. We have to learn new skills. We have to change our work profile and so on. So that's the key. Now, extending on the similar question, Devanjana, so how do you see both the academic institutions and industry? What changes they have to bring about in whatever they are doing so that we all are reskilled, we all are capable to manage in the AI world?
So, I'll tell you what I tell my kids. The age of generalists is pretty much, I think, over. You have to be specialist in whatever you do. You have to know beyond what is available, what knowledge is available to a machine. So you have to go beyond the internet pretty much. Have your own, so this is another, kind of advice that I always imbibe and, try to do. So we need to have that point of view. We need to have develop that specialization in whichever fields we are working in, technology, humanities, society as a whole. But the idea is, as I said, the USP that we have is our emotional intelligence, our creative thinking, our intuition, and how we can assimilate all this knowledge in a fraction of a second and apply it to whatever situation, whatever problems we are handling. I think that is the uniqueness, and that is where we should build upon our strengths.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think a lot of you would have heard about something which is very popular nowadays is T-shaped skills, which Bain and McKinsey has talked about. What it says is you ought to have some basic skills and then you specialize in one of them. Go deep, and that's what she talked about. So very interesting. That is one round of discussion we had. Now we'll have 2-3 quick questions from the audience. Yes, sir. Please go ahead. So so one is that please be brief and specific. Either you can redirect your question to any of the panelists, or we will redirect to. So is there a mic for the audience? Maybe you can take that. So if it is not for a particular panelist, me or Professor John will redirect it to one of them. Else you can.
Sure. I'm Dr. Ashutosh from JNU. So my question actually is to the panel, since we are talking, I'm basically from academia and I had some past experience in the industry. So it has two parts. First, actually it is the CEO of NVIDIA, who kind of claim that the future generation would not be requiring, that is what they're aiming for in terms of making new types of computer systems, where they do not need the software to be developed by humans. So that is what they're targeting. So that is first part, how realistic it is. And the second part of it is in terms of democratization of the architecture and design per se for the circuits which are required for this. If everything becomes AGI or generative AI, maybe operating system can be done better than what Microsoft is doing or Googles of the world are doing and stuff like that. How far do you think that possibility is going to be coming to the realization part of it? Maybe it's there everywhere. I mean, like data as such, there are particular countries like Taiwan which make almost 70 to 80% of the chips. So they have enormous data. Samsung is another part. Rest all of them are basically designing, and so that's.
So this is an interesting question, and NVIDIA is the darling of the market right now. It's among the top 7 market capitalized company in the world. And so I'll put this question to Kapil. You can go to Kapil.
Thank you. I think great question. And I mean, one of the things, couple of years when generative AI launched and everybody was talking about being able to write softwares automatically. I think the first question you were asking is, yes, if we can write software, why would we write software in Java or JavaScript? Why not just go to machine assembly language and write the software right there to do it? Having said that, I think whether it's going to happen or not, I think eventually it will. I don't know, but it's not going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And the reason why I say is, see, this whole concept of software getting so business users being able to write software, which has also been known as low code, no code, has also been existing for many, many years now. I personally have been working on platforms for 2 decades, and where 20 years ago when I started the career, we were writing JavaScripts, now we are using specialized frameworks and platforms to deliver. So there has always been a goal to improve the quality by standardizing, by abstracting out the complex pieces away from the day-to-day developer use cases. So some of those things will continue to happen. AI will become yet another tool or another framework that will allow us to do it. But going back and saying that we would have a simple software that's going to understand human language and write everything automatically and getting it done, that I think is far away. And largely is to do with the ability to understand what the users want, how to connect that dots to in terms of what is that the business user wants to do. That's something which is going to take its time. And the concept where it starts to all is going to take time is a distinction between narrow and this AGI, which are on completely 2 different paradigms altogether. If you look at some of the most successful AIs today, I mean, an example that comes to is Grammarly, which is very specialized and focused in solving English-speaking grammar issues. Is a very narrow AI that does one task very well. If you look at AI for airplanes, it does one task very well. On the other spectrum, thinking about writing a software for everything is the AGI part of it, which is where that's a complete shift in terms of where we are and where we want to go. Will we be able to see AI that solves specific software issues? The answer is yes. But will it solve everything? It's going to take its own sweet time. I don't think that's happening at least in the next 6 years. I have a vision where 2030 is going to look like. This is not going to be part of 2030 vision. But then again, the industry moves faster. It has a way to surprise us. Let's see where that goes. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
All right. Thank you, Kapil. So one more question from the audience. Anyone would like to ask? Yes, please. If someone can help with the mic.
Who raised the hand?
Yeah.
Who raised the hand?
So I'm Kirtan Kalaria, co-founder of Scientia Technologies, focusing on AI-based automation for businesses. My question is specifically for Mr. Ahuja and Mr. Gaur. So when implementing automated workflows in Salesforce, so what are the most difficult challenges that are faced and what are the most underutilized areas? So So, and specifically, what are the challenges from the client's perspective in adaptation of those AI-based workflows?
So you asked to Kapil and Ajay, is that right, or you asked to? Okay, sure, sir.
Yeah, so I think, and again, I mean, what I was talking about earlier, right? Salesforce is a very specific platform, and I think it was Salesforce recently who's announced a complete shift of their AI strategy to go to agentic models and what have you and stuff. I mean, depending on where you are. So where I interact with Salesforce is mostly on their commerce platforms and their marketing platforms and what have you. And they've introduced, I believe, tools like Einsteins and whatnot to deliver those pieces. The big challenge that we have is when you work in a platform ecosystem, you have to rely with what the platform has to give and trying to create composable use cases where you are able to take what the business needs and plug into the platform is where the challenges start to come in. And that's true not just for Salesforce, but every platform that you come into play. And that has been at least my issue with the Salesforce as well. One of the IPs that I'm trying to build right now is around creating story narratives through generative AIs, and digital marketing is a key part of the puzzle. So working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, looking at Salesforce Data Cloud, and then commerce. The biggest piece is how do we create what we want to build for the businesses on top of what the platform constraints are, which is where you are then dependent on what AI it is going to give, what kind of costing it's going to provide, and how you're going to scale those pieces in. That generally is the industry challenge when you come to the platforms. Again, I'm not worked with all the areas of the Salesforce, but 3 or 4 platforms that I've worked with, that's typically is the challenge.
Okay, thank you, Kapil. And one last question, we are doing good on time. Do you want to add?
Let me give you my, again, wearing my old hat of IBM hat, right? So you must have heard the data stage, right, which is a workflow, right? You define how to ingest the data and then basically clean in that and then transform the data in that, right? So let's say, take an even little bit more simpler example. You are given a 10,000 resumes and you want to select 10 out of them for interview. And so you apply the different criteria, right? Filtering and that. It is some kind of flow. And you want to, let's say you have defined your workflow in whatever the business processes language that you take, right? The question is basically is that we need to deal with, and currently basically the hallucination problem, right? How will you figure it out whether the person who has written this is the really candidate or not, right? You want to candidate this. So that is number one. Number two, and the biggest problem is that querying the structured data, or bringing the structured data in the control of the chat GPT or any OpenAI things is right, versus Llama 2 or anything. Basically, it's a really hard one, right? So, and particularly when you are writing the nested workflow, it is not going to easy, right, things. So my personal belief is that in next 10 years indeed, that AI will not replace completely the human beings. It can be an assistant, right? Yet it can simplify your job, but can it will remove the people? Answer is no. That is what it might take.
Perfect, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that gives a lot of reassurance. And, yeah. So one more question before we go to the next round. Yes. So we have another audience round in the end. We'll come there then.
All right. My question is, AI is also touching upon the academics. We are the professor, academics. PhD scholars are putting lesser efforts because they are taking the help from AI. You have also talked about the tech personalized solution. Okay, but we are having many institutions and forums where we work and teach in a little resource constraint environment. Okay, so what could possibly be the way out that using this we can make our teaching effective at the same time learning also effective? Because students are way ahead than us. They are knowing much of the tools which we are not aware about. So what is your take on that? Thank you.
I can give one practical thing. Okay, so it's not me. One of my colleagues basically tested that people are doing a lot of cheating. Students particularly, right? Plagiarism, this and that. He said, okay guys, you go and use the chat GPT. This is the assignment, you do it. everyone basically did the assignment and submitted to different TAs. Then he asked the TAs, take their solution and ask the chat GPT, generate 5 questions out of it. And then you ask these questions back to the students and see basically how many of them can answer. Right? And they could not answer that. And he evaluated the candidates from that. So I think that is the best way to do that. Right?
So Professor Lance, you also want to answer her question?
Well, obviously, personalization is a solution. And also, I do see that in time to come, in terms of education, it needs to be tokenized. In other words, going to piecemeal, rather than a general qualification. Well, one of the things I see that, well, the training on demand is a good example. So really, you just simply say, oh, I got a BN, well, I got a BTech, then I can do this, do that. No, the answer is no. It all depends how much you have learned. And well, how are you going to show that you're able to do it? Okay? And also, in talking about education, well, one of the ideal cases, we can have a personalized AI tutor. So in other words, like, if you're able to assess, say for example, right now you have a series of questions assessing the quiz, but it's fixed. You don't change according to the understanding of a student. If a student is continue failing the earlier one, well, there's no change of those subsequent questions. But really, you need to adapt to that as well. So that means that if you're asking the questions, well, the students obviously is lacking of the understanding of those concepts. Are you able to change another section of the question to change or to ask the guys? So those are the things that you need to look into. So it's an ideal well, is yet to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So with that, we have one more audience round. We'll allow more questions. So, but we're now moving over to Professor John.
Okay, moving on. So the debate won't be complete anything on AI if you are not talking about ethical AI and privacy concerns. So there is always a big debate that's around ethical AI and privacy concerns into digital engagement. So let me ask my question to Professor Lance Fung. What are, in your opinion, some ethical concerns regarding AI's influence on user engagement and behavior in digital platforms? And since you worked in different organizations, how organization can address these ethical issues?
Okay, thank you, Dr. John. I believe that we now come to the point that we do see that the other dark side of AI. Well, no doubt that we've been talking about all the good things. But on the other hand, unfortunately, well, we also see it from the other angle as well. So, well, just earlier on, you've been talking about the question, well, what are the jobs people are getting? In an ideal world, this does not really need a lot of job people, because if people, everyone is behaving properly. But again, well, why we have a lot of jobs of being the policeman, we got a court. Why? Because you've got the bad elements. So in other words, the criminals giving them jobs. Same thing applies to AI. So ethical issues, just I can give you a whole list. Privacy, talking about bias and discrimination. You're talking about the design, well, misinformation is one of the main issues we're facing, in particular in the democratic world. Well, how, well, deepfake, well, how false information is going to influencing, well, the public opinion that really, well, disguise, well, the truth. Also, from the user point of view, addiction is another issue. Okay, so in other words, well, games is an example. So we have seen some cases in some places. Well, the parents are so fed up with the kids were playing too much on the games, but they throw the games away, and then the kids will jump from the 20th floor, commit suicide because it's so desperate that all my tools are gone. Surveillance is another one. Take a look. Well, we have a camera on there. Last night, well, I did not attend any of the functions because I was attending a treasury training in IEEE over in headquarters. It was from 5:50 until 2 a.m. Okay. One of the things I really enjoy is sometimes they pan, well, the camera, pan the audience. You can see some audience is yawning, some audience is talking. Now, if I capture that one and then I put it on the Facebook, people will laugh at that. But it's going to influence those guys, and so the boundary of the surveillance, how much I can use it, is a major issue. So how company is going to work on that? Do you have a policy? Make sure, say for example, training, that your data training is really diverse. Well, one good question is, well, I just attended another conference not long ago. What the issue is, when you train a large language model, English, no problem, you have a lot. But when you go to other languages, in comparison, well, we use Chinese as an example, it's much, much less than that. So in that case, well, in terms of the accuracy of the training model, then you have a big difference between the two. Then in terms of the user input, do we have enough, well, authority give back to the user how much data they can use. And also in terms of the regulation, well, we do have the global data protection regulation. We need to attach to that. So those are the things. But ultimately, come back to the education of the user. They must know what should be their right. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Lang, for that coverage from the user perspective, from the regulator perspective, and where we should be careful. So let me try to get a perspective from an industry panelist. Let's move on to Debanjana. So in a world of growing AI-powered digital transformations or digital experience that we have, this data privacy concerns is something really big that is still there in many of the enterprising companies, okay? So while how it is still possible to handle this data privacy concern, at the same time, we need to embrace the innovative and engaging use cases what AI provides. What is your view on it, Debanjana?
So I think, I'll start with the basics. So if you think of security, there is 3 aspects: confidentiality, integrity, availability. Okay. And in case of AI-based application, it's not different. So you have data, you have the models, and you have the usage. So usage by the different applications that is using it. And when it comes to security, we have to secure each of these layers and any communication between these layers. So my data needs to be secured at rest and in motion. When I'm using my models, the provenance of the models needs to be checked. For example, not every enterprise is going to build models of their own, right? So you have to understand, what is the source of my models? Can they be trusted? What is the data that is being used to train them? And it kind of relates to what Professor Lance was saying. It goes back to AI ethics. My AI has to be transparent, it has to be fair, so I need to ensure that the data I'm training my models with are free of any bias. It needs to be explainable, and in today's, business, this is becoming more and more important. I can say that yes, with generative AI, I'm, doing these 5 things. I'm generating recommendations, but, the client will come and challenge me, okay, show me, how did you arrive at this? It has to be explainable to gain the trust, and which comes, unless I trust something, will I be able to use it? And then comes, the usage. So usage by the application. So this actually takes us back to even the traditional security considerations. How do I, secure each of my application layers? So I need to monitor, I need to manage, I need to control, I need to audit. And there are different, technological mechanisms, there are tools, but at the end of the day, it's basically how I kind of apply and govern my landscape, which some of it is under my control. For example, say in my private cloud, some of them are third party, some of them are, hosted SaaS applications. But do I have the, relevant security principles, policies? Have I ensured I have the right threat models assessed for each of these components? I think having that entire umbrella of framework, your security framework, up to date, and this needs to be revisited, and you have a constant mechanism of monitoring and controlling the same.
Okay. So thank you, Debanjana. So that throws a light into, with the emergence of many things in AI, equally the security framework also has to be very robust and then coming, and then government is also putting a lot of effort, especially in one of the pilot projects of Government of India from MEITI, the Information Security Education and Awareness, where 50 institutes across the country on 10 verticals, and there is a separate track called AI security that's been put. So maybe in another 3-4 years, policies will come up, and I think even a lot of the discussions is happening in the judicial sector as well. When there is a problem that has been happening and it's an AI-driven system that's going to make some fault, and who is at their fault, our legal system has not judged to that. So gone are the times where we will be able to see that one of the party would be an AI bot or something that has been coming. So let's move forward over to Ajay for taking the next round of questions.
Yeah, thank you, Professor John. So we talked about ethics and privacy. It's a strange world. We want to be public with a lot of things. We have channels which provide that, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but we want to be private. Why so? Because it's an individual decision, right? So my next logical question is, and this is to Professor Mukesh, it's about regulations and trust in AI. Now, as we see, AI is taking center stage in terms of taking a lot of decisions about us. For example, what's going to happen if autonomous car meets with an accident? What about autonomous medical diagnosis? AI-based system is giving some results to me, and I'm not sure if it is right or wrong, and it is playing with my life. So it's a question about how much regulation should we do? Should we do regulation or we don't? Because sometimes if you do a lot of regulations, it will stifle the innovation, it will stifle the creativity. If you look at anything which is one that nobody likes to be regulated, but if anything which is danger to the public life, it has to be regulated. And we've seen it, right? Look at examples like car, plane, food, drugs, everything is regulated. So my question is, what is right actually approach in terms of should we bring in regulation now, or we bring in when it's a more mature stage? How much we regulate, how much we don't regulate? What do you propose?
So two things here. So let me draw the analogy of data versus AI. In the data, we talk about the data life cycle. And we, in any organization, we cannot consume the data which is trustworthy, right? We bring the data into the master data management, and then only we can take the decisions. We run the campaign, or we do take the decisions, or whatever it is, right? And governance is one part of the data life cycle, right from data ingestion to the data analytics. In between, basically, you look at some interesting pattern in the data analytics, and then you go back and see the data provenance, kaun sa source hai which generated this data, and why am I getting that data, right, or that pattern. Similarly, we need to draw in the AI. Trust, if we cannot trust on the outcome given by the AI system, we lose the faith, right? That is one. Now, in order to fix that, we need to look at why the AI system is giving me this outcome. Whether have we created a different embeddings in the vector space, or whether basically the data basically ingested from whatever the source, the data is not trustworthy, or we did not curate the data. So I think, this is my personal, and this is what I learned in the IBM, and this CEO of IBM used to be my senior vice president in IBM Research, Arvind Krishna. He used to say that 80% of the time goes in the data preparation. When the good stuff will go in the system, then the good output will come. So trust is the most important thing. Otherwise, people will start losing the faith on that, number one. Number two is about you said the security, right? So there is a different field is coming on the secure AI. And indeed, in IIT Delhi, there was a UK sponsored workshop day before yesterday on the secure AI, or trustworthy AI, or explainable AI. And the Bill Gates organization has given the IIT Delhi is something roughly $1.83 million to work on that, right? So that is very, very important, right? And as you said, can it go one after another? Should we develop the solution and worry about the trust later on, or the vice versa? I think it is going in parallel way, right? Because the industry job is, industry cannot ingest anything, as I said, they cannot bring the data in the transactional system if the transaction is basically giving you the wrong results, right? It cannot be possible. Similarly, basically in the AI space, we need to look at that. So industry can look at basically how to develop more secure system, more trustworthy system, which having a really almost zero false positive or hallucination, right? On the zero, whereas the academics, because our job is to conduct the far-reaching research, we can look at that, and somewhere basically there is some kind of point of margin where we will learn from each other.
Okay, so that is interesting. What Professor Mukesh talked about is side by side. It's not about first this, second this, or second this, first this. It's about how they go, and this is where responsible organizations and responsible academics play a very, very key role. So with that, I hand it back to Professor John.
Yeah, with the same line, Ajay, I would like to ask a follow-up question, maybe from an industry perspective from Kapil. Do you think the regulatory frameworks currently strikes the right balance between encouraging innovation at the same time ensuring safety? Where should the government focus their efforts? Kapil, what do you feel?
Yeah, I think the balance is more towards innovation right now. There are many frameworks that exist that allow that bring that level of security or governance into play. I mean, look at what happened with OpenAI when they launched 2 years ago, and what's happening with organizations like Adobe's of the world. They basically took all the creative images and stuff and creating models for Midjourney is doing, what Adobe is doing, and now there are lawsuits on those organizations in terms of have they used the right copyright or not. They just went ahead and innovated and driven those pieces done. I think the closest I've seen, so there are other organizations like Microsoft, even for us, where we are putting in, there are rules and regulations, or at least principles we are putting in that will define in terms of what's right versus what's wrong, but doesn't exist. I mean, if you look at GDPR, it took so many years for EU to go back and define what GDPR is, and its adoption throughout the world has still not happened. AI is just getting started. We don't even know what all is going to go wrong for governing body to go back and define what governance is coming in. I think EU is coming up with something recently. I think they were about to announce something. If they're not already, they are, I think, very close to doing it. But we are far from anything out there.
Okay, so your viewpoint is let's have the innovation drive first and followed by the regulatory framework.
Yes, and I think yes, that's required given how early this innovation pieces is. I mean, if I was to take us back to 15 years when we had iPhone driving this whole mobile industry, for first 5 years was mostly just innovating, understanding what the pieces are. I think that's where the generative AI puzzle is. That's where the democratization of the AI is happening now. So for the next few years, I think we have to drive it, and organizations who are building need to be responsible. So what worries me is when OpenAI were to fire their entire governing body because Sam Altman probably feels differently is what worries me a lot. I think that's where the responsibility has to shift. We need innovation to move forward for now, and eventually I think the governance will have to catch up this.
Yeah, so one more follow-up question, Kapil. Like when we try to explain about AI to our older generations, parents and grandparents, they'll be always asking, how much of a trust delegation that you can give to AI. Can AI be fully trusted for decision making, or where we should be drawing the line? How much of human involvement and how much of things can be delegated to AI? So this is going to become a big role. And what do you feel about it?
I think it's no different than how much trust do you put in technology today. I mean, I was given an example, you spoke about elders, right? My dad came to me, I think 3 weeks ago, with an email coming in inbox from Commissioner of Police saying that there has been detection of activity of him on child pornography. And I'm like, ignore and move on. It was spam. I mean, and I know it can't happen because I have enough bells and whistles set up in my home routers and laptop that none of that can even pass through it. So there is technology spam already happening. Now, can we trust that blindly? Absolutely no. You're just going to go back, click a few things, and then eventually it's going to lead down to some extortion, something else, and what have you. I think AI is in a similar frame. And I think it's important not just for our previous generation, but also to our coming generation. I think we spoke about kids earlier in the conversation. A lot of time I'm spending is also with my kids for 16 and 10 years, helping them understand how they need to think about AI to go into their day-to-day lives, how they have to use it for learning. I think that education or that knowledge is very critical, and those who know, who can kind of inform both their previous generations and coming generation, I think is important. But yeah, to me it's no different than how technology is moving ahead. AI is just another tool of the trade. We need to understand what it brings and how harmful it can be if you don't have the human intervention.
Okay. Thanks, Kapil. So let us hope that our scientific community will have the right wisdom and temperament and mindset in knowing where is the border and how can we leverage AI to that. Okay, so let's have one more round of questions from the audience. Those who would like to ask questions, be very specific. Yes, and then can someone pass the mic to the audience there? Here we have the mic. And you can be very specific, that's one thing, and at the same time, which panelist you want to address it, or else we will take the liberty in assigning who will answer.
Yeah, thank you. I think in the current pervading advent of AI, we should also be mindful about the trade-off between the hardware and the software in terms of GPU or TPU coming up. At the same time, in the backdrop, another revolution is going on, that's quantum computing and what's quantum machine learning, what IBM obviously in Qiskit or even Google Seek is going on. So what you suggest or what you predict in the future of this conventional AI in the backdrop of this quantum computing?
You want to be specific to anyone or?
I think IBM guys could take up this or from academia also.
I can give a short answer to that. I mean, this is my personal view. The quantum, I think, I don't know whether I will be able to see in my lifetime, right, that it is working for the, it has a great applications, no doubt on that. Whether the system has been deployed of that qubit, right, in the field, I have a big question mark. So I think we still have minimum 20 to 50 years, right, time frame before it really gets met much. So probably.
Just add on to that, as you mentioned. So I think, yeah, it's may not be 20, so but it may be earlier than that. But I think quantum is setting the foundation for that AI at scale. But so I kind of it still sound repetitive. It has to be good tech for the society. So I think that is to be ensured. But I think with quantum and with AI and generative AI, I think there is the opportunity is enormous.
Yeah, and this, I mean, I'm no quantum expert. We do some work on quantum, and it does very closely to digital part of it. I mean, from my perspective, kind of layman-ish, up until now, one of the big reasons why AI wasn't going was compute and data. So we're starting to see compute with NVIDIA coming with GPUs and whatnot. I think quantum is going to solve the next step into the compute part of it whenever it does. Quantum can do a lot more than that, but from an AI perspective, I think compute, when we start hitting the benchmarks again, and we can't go beyond, I think quantum will solve that. Whether it is 5, 10, 20, that I have no idea.
Yes, I think 3 panelists gave the answer. So we can have there, and we'll come back to you. We'll give thanks to others.
Good afternoon to everybody. It has been so nice discussion. My question is to Mukesh sir, as he was discussing about the ethical values in the AI regulation. So we have seen that mostly all these AI tools, they are concentrated in a particular region. In our case, it is USA specific. And their cultural value is means significantly different than the other world. And when we adapt AI, how would we ensure that it is suited to our ethics, it is suited to our values? Primarily, it is the government responsibility, but the government takes some time in regulating those AI technology. So how we can ensure that industry who adopt those AI technology are making it suitable for the ethical values of those regions?
Yes, thank you. Over to Mukesh.
Okay, so this is really very hard question. Is very, there is no precise answer for this. I mean, this is what I think, right? I agree, it's not only the government job to define the policy and then follow. It is our responsibility also to do the responsible things, right? Even with or without AI, right? So that is number one, right? So it's not only the government. When the government will tell not to do the crime, therefore we will not do the crime, right? It is our also responsibility, right, not to do the crime, right? That is number one. Number two is about the regulatory, and I think one of the panelists I forgot basically, right, that every government, whether it's a UK or Europe, GDPR is just only one small aspect of the total things related to the privacy. But OECD, right, the UK AI strategy, the other, and our government is also basically defining the strategy. But those are only the guidelines, right? Will the government catch you if something goes wrong? Right, you can pass the bugs actually on the data that look, I was given the data, what can I do for that, right? So it is a very, very, hard things to define, particularly in the AI when you have tons of data, right? Other things you said about the culture. I think there are a lot of initiatives, what is the name, Bharat AI or some name that IIT Chennai is leading that project. I forgot that, like ChatGPT equivalent of that in our regional languages, right? In Japan, basically, they are developing their own things. I saw that visiting NII just a couple of months back. So every country is coming up basically their own things that it can run on their vast amount of data and can answer the question on that. But where you will pass if there is any problem, gives you some wrong, right? Not trustworthy. Again, we are back to the one, can we trust on the solution, right? And even if you look at the disclaimer that comes on the chat GPT, you ask any question, it does, right? Consult your, say, accountant, or depending on the one question that you are asking, right? So that is, I think, is the main thing. It is a joint responsibility of all the parties, whether a user or a developer or basically the contributor of data.
Thank you, Professor Mohavia. So we have
one last question. I mean, this is just extension of the thing he has been talking about. My concern was like how AI plus or AI using the quantum computers can be used as a weapon per se, and the whole future until because you're talking about regulations and you're talking in terms of so-called laws, regulations, and stuff like that. So can you just throw some light? I mean, can easily be going into a direction which nobody would like to talk.
I really don't work in quantum computer. I have no idea, right? When I was in IBM research, one of my team members now, he's leading the Subramaniam, right? He's the one, I have no idea about that. At that time, I think it was a 16 qubit one, I don't know now, it is 64 or whatever the IBM. But IBM, I can say, is the leader in that. But that much I saw, I don't know, other panelists can answer that.
Yeah. Really short, I mean, just like I said, AI is no different in terms of tech than any other tech. I mean, you can take quantum with any tech and weaponize it just like you can do it. And I think what we also should understand is for the last couple of years, what we've started to see from an AI is the generative AI part of it. AI has been there for almost 70 years. And the deep learning technologies and stuff still continue to exist. And in my perspective, being able to leverage those AIs is going to have a far more potential than just generative. Generative is just going to be part of the puzzle. So yeah, can it be used? Potentially yes. It's going to be up to us to stop it.
Do we need to take questions or?
Yeah. No, I think some.
That girl was very passionate. I think we should give her a chance. One of the TENSYMP champion. Okay, maybe. Be quick so that we can wrap it up. Yes.
My name is Mridula and I'm a second year student. So my question is to everyone at the panel. I was currently reading that OpenAI is going into losses, like the financial shares are dropping down and they are going into premium accounts. So can you tell me why is it happening that OpenAI is going into losses?
Did you want to?
So I haven't read their financial report, so I don't know what it is. But see, there are two things which are becoming very clear: is the amount of data and compute that we need to train these large language models needs a lot of energy. It needs a lot of energy to train, needs a lot of energy to execute the queries. And OpenAI generally is an open source model. Of course, they are moving into commercialization part of the puzzle, which is where they're going to make their money. But there's been huge investments. They are into the research and R&D phase. So them being into losses is no different than some of the other organizations who've been moving into that piece. I mean, if you go back and read Amazon's history, the first time they made profit was in 2014. They kept on investing, innovating, delivering the business models and stuff. So it's no surprise that OpenAI is moving into still research and innovations, and they have organizations like Microsoft investing into them and what have you. I think right now this is the innovation phase. In that stage, you generally end up being into losses rather than being successful. But then again, I haven't looked at their financial statements, how good or bad it is. But AI, large language models, is generally a very expensive tool.
So I think, Ajay, we are done from the questions. Can you have a final conclusion and wrap up from your end?
All right, thank you, Professor John. And so what I'll say is just 2 minutes. So while digital transformation has been on high-speed highway for last 2 to 3 decades, I would further add that AI has put that into steroids. AI itself will generate $1 trillion revenue next year, which is huge. But for me, it's not about numbers. It's more about the impact and transformation it causes. It brings about. Key is how does it provide the socio-economic and health benefits to the population at large, and this is one of the theme of this whole conference. And I feel that this is the role and responsibility of both academia and industry who will come together, and I'm confident that we'll be able to do that pretty well. So with that, thank you very much for patient listening, and we'll have more conversation. Thank you very much. So, Garima, you are going to come.
With that, we come to the end of our session. It was a very lively and engaging session thanks to our panel speakers and moderators. I'm sure each one of us sitting here gained something valuable out of this. And the young audience especially feel motivated to take up a career in AI now. If you could have a very big round of applause for all our panelists. Before we conclude, I'd like to call Dr. Narendra Kumar Sir, the Director of East Campus, on the stage. Professor Prerna Gaur, General Chair TENSYMP. Subrata Sir, General Chair TENSYMP, and Professor Rajneesh Sharma, the Organizing Chair, to distribute the mementos. Could please come up on the stage. Prerna ma'am, if you could please give the memento to Mukesh Monia sir. Mr. Lance Fung sir, ma'am, if you could. Kapil Ahuja sir. Rajneesh sir. Rajneesh sir, if you could give it to John Jose sir as well. Debanjana Deshgupta ma'am. Mukesh sir.
Professor John.
Mr. Ajay Kulasi. Thank you so much. We conclude our session.